Good afternoon. On behalf of the family of David Lim, it is my privilege and honor to welcome you here today. On a personal note, David and I attended classes together at La Sierra University, 1971 to 72, and served together at Kettering Health, just across the street, where he served as a physician and I as a chaplain and counselor. Whether you are watching today via live stream from somewhere across the world, or whether you are here as a guest or as a member of David's church family at Kettering Adventist Church, may you find comfort and peace in this celebration of his life today. Now, you may have noticed that we started just a little late today, 10 minutes. Past the written start time in your program. Many of you are all too familiar with this last little joke that David is playing on us, because David lived by a different kind of clock than everyone else had. And I see a lot of heads in the audience going like this, you know, because David always showed up on what his family affectionately calls grandpa time. I know you will forgive him one more time for being late. David did not want a funeral service. He wanted a happy celebration of his life. And he tried to get me to promise that there would be no tears shed at this, his memorial service here today, because David did not want us to mourn as those with no hope, which to him meant no crying. Well, we might not carry out all of David's wishes here today, because we will certainly be real, we will be ready to share our hearts, and it will sometimes be raw. So, sorry, David, you made us wait on you. Now it's your turn. Let us invite God's presence to be with us today. Dear God, life is sometimes cruel in that just when we get used to appreciating the value of someone like David, who seemed to live and love so effortlessly, that another unanticipated horseman of the apocalypse came riding along to carry him away, while we are left with trying to understand why now. May today we spend our time together listening to the voice of your love, asking us to find personal meaning through this pain of loss in such a way that we will find healing and joy sufficient to give us hope. It seems to be your way to peace and restoration. We are always amazed at how you take such common things as our stories, our grief, our memories, and through your creative love, transform lifeless things into living things, and thereby find hope and joy. May it be so this afternoon, we pray. Amen. Cheryl Nance, David's American sister, will bless us by reading one of David's favorite Bible texts, Psalm 23. She will be followed by Michael Daly, David's son-in-law, who will offer a summary of his obituary.
I'm reading today from the Complete Jewish Bible Translation. Adonai is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He has me lie down in grassy pastures. He leads me by quiet water. He restores my inner person. He guides me in right paths for the sake of his own name. Even if I pass through death-dark ravines, I will fear no disaster, for you are with me. Your rod and staff reassure me. You prepare a table for me, even as my enemies watch. You anoint my head with oil from an overflowing cup. Goodness and grace will pursue me every day of my life, and I will live in the house of Adonai for years and years to come.
Good afternoon. Dr. David Francis Lim, 74 years old, of Springboro, Ohio, passed away peacefully July 18th, 2023, at his home, surrounded by the love of friends and family. Dr. Lim is preceded in death by his dear mother, Lim Sit Na Yong, father Henry Bernard Lim, brother Matthew, and brother of 52 years, Daniel Engelberg. Dr. Lim is survived by his wife. Why did that happen? Survived by his wife of 21 years, Colleen, sisters Grace and Jean, his daughters Jennifer and Alicia, stepchildren Mike, Drew, and Glenn, and his beloved grandchildren Austin, Bella, Ethan, Eleanor, Amelia, George, Dorothea, Catherine, and William. Although he left his life far too soon, Dr. Lim lived each day to the fullest. He was born and raised in Hong Kong and came to the U.S. at the age of 17 after winning Hong Kong's singing competition, Talent Time. His group, which he was the lead singer of, the Gabriels, won a recording contract with EMI and a Volkswagen Beetle, which Dave then sold for a plane ticket to the U.S. His mother also was instrumental in facilitating his dream of coming to the U.S., as she frequently hid gold behind the tiles in the kitchen. When the time came, she had raised the amount of money required to attend school in the U.S. as a foreign student. After coming to the U.S., Dr. Lim put himself through undergraduate studies at La Sierra University in Loma Linda, California. He then completed medical school at Loma Linda University School of Medicine. He collected a multitude of lifelong friends along the way, including his brother, Dan Engelberg, who became his U.S. family. After completing medical school, Dr. Lim eventually settled here in Dayton, Ohio, where he was a founding member of the Emergency Room Physicians Group, EMS, that still exists and operates at Kettering Health Network. At the age of 45, Dr. Lim survived a rare brain aneurysm he suffered while snow skiing in Colorado. He was number 6 in the world to survive from this type of stroke. While this prevented him from continuing as an emergency room physician, this did not deter him from doing what he had loved. Dr. Lim then went back and completed internal medicine residency and continued to help others through the practice of medicine. Throughout his career as a physician, he held a number of titles and positions, but his favorite among those titles was being a teacher. Dr. Lim believed that as a physician, he could impact many lives. However, he knew if he dedicated his time to teaching others, he could help even more people through his students. When he wasn't being a tremendous physician and teacher, Dr. Lim enjoyed spending time with his family and friends. He loved traveling the world with his wife, Colleen. He adored his daughters and grandchildren. He enjoyed watching baseball, especially his favorite team, the LA Dodgers. He loved snow skiing, mountain climbing, which included Mount Whitney in Bolivia, which were his most memorable trips. He loved listening to music. He loved fishing. On any given weekend, you could find Dr. Lim reading the labels in the vitamin aisle at Costco for hours. Dr. Lim loved spending time with his friends. He often visited with them while eating at First Watch, Doubledays, and Ginger and Spice. They followed up their meals by target shooting, which was a weekly hobby he never wanted to miss. Everywhere he went, Dr. Lim made friends and touched lives. Everywhere he went, Dr. Lim knew someone in the room. Those close to him lovingly called him the mayor. In the end, Dr. Lim accepted his diagnosis and was at peace with his life. He assured everyone that his faith was strong and said he was thankful for the additional time he was given after his aneurysm. Dr. Lim said he was more worried about the people he was leaving behind. And sure enough, his departure has left the biggest hole that will be impossible to fill. Dr. Lim, Dave to me, will be deeply missed by all who knew him.
Dr. David Lim created this memorial service today. By his design, he wanted all of the elements to reveal two things that he cherished the most in his life, that gave him the most joy. One was music. He chose all the songs that you're hearing today. The other is his family and friends. And so the next section of this memorial service will really be comprised of a time of listening to someone offer a personal reflection, and then by another piece of music that David loved. And so starting with Dr. Kim Kwiatek, we will just go in order according to your program with no introductions.
David was a good friend of the Kwiatek family. His influence over the years was very much woven into my life and into the lives of other members of my family. My oldest daughter, Karen, in particular, thought of him as a second father figure who in many ways influenced how she now practices medicine as a physician assistant. And many, many years ago, when she ran away from home, she ran to Dave and to his family. Karen credits Dave with saving her life. No, not then, but later, when he immediately was able to diagnose her, while various doctors in the DC area were unable to do so. This led to her seeking appropriate treatment for her thyroid condition and subsequent cancer. So when Dave died exactly on Karen's daughter's first birthday, little Charlotte, she naturally felt that Dave, in many ways, was the one who allowed her to create new life for her family as a part of his legacy. I credit Dave, amongst many other things, with making a backpacker out of me. And I actually just got home yesterday from a hiking trip with my son Oren and his son, my grandson Eli, where Dave's outsized influence was at the forefront of many of our thoughts and conversations. Oren wanted me to be sure to mention Dave's presence with us on our long treks this past week. When I visited Dave for the last time in the hospital and he said his goodbyes, we reflected on many of the adventures that we had had together. And when I got home that day, I wrote down a few thoughts I had, which I'll share with you now. And I call this the perfect physician. What does the perfect physician look like? The perfect physician is really smart. In fact, the perfect physician thoroughly knows the literature in his own specialty and everyone else's specialty as well. The perfect physician, like the fictitious Dr. House, will make the diagnosis when nobody else is able to. The perfect doctor is a teacher. He loves to impart his knowledge and especially his love of his profession and the good that it can do to his many, many students. The perfect physician always has time for you. He will not rush you. He will get to know you and all about you and your family and your hobbies and what makes you tick. He will elicit all of the important stuff, which will allow him to treat you holistically and also make you feel like a VIP. The perfect physician, when finally getting ready to exit your room, will turn around and sit back down when you say, "Just one more thing, doctor," knowing that you are about to tell him the most important thing. The perfect physician will know how to laugh along with his patients because laughter is strong medicine. The perfect doctor will make every patient feel like they are his most trusted friend and not just another widget to be dealt with. He will empathize with the patient and with their family. The perfect doctor knows how to live his own life, how to experience life to the fullest. He will pick up 100 different hobbies just so that he can understand life better, and he will want to learn to do each and everything in the most complete way possible. The perfect physician will help his patients attain the highest quality of life possible. The perfect physician knows the value of human interrelationships and will encourage families to stay connected just as he does with his own family. The perfect physician loves life, but knows when and how to face death. The perfect physician has helped many patients to face their own mortality. He understands when the balance of pain and suffering no longer justifies fighting. The perfect physician has a name, and the perfect physician has just called it quits on his own battle with cancer. The perfect physician is Dr. David Francis Lim. I just said goodbye to David, my great friend and colleague. Your life has truly been a blessing to countless others. Godspeed, David. I love you dearly. Everyone who knew you did.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Ingeberg, and I'm here as a symbol of a lifelong friendship that existed between my father and Dave. To my father, Dave was his brother from another mother, and he, in that sense, was my uncle. Through that friendship that was more familial than a traditional friendship, our families grew close together with a lot of tremendously memorable shared experiences and vacations. One of the most amazing experiences I had with Dave was when we, along with Dr. Quietek, climbed Mount Whitney when I was a child. And so he was with me at literally the highest point in my life. But he was also not there. He was also there with me when I was at some of the lower points in my life. Last year, when my father passed away, Dave and Colleen and Alicia came to visit and provided comfort and solace to us in a time of great need. And I'm forever grateful for his steady support and advice during that difficult time. And I'm sure my father would be here now if he hadn't passed away last year. What I remember as a child, because believe it or not, I've known Dave longer than almost anyone else in my life, except for my parents and my brother, was his tremendous sense of humor. Just loved it. He had such a joy for life. And so my brother and I, when I was maybe 6 and he was 9, we noticed an idiosyncrasy of Dave, which is that he had tremendously toned, muscular calves. And he was fit. He was ready to go hiking. And my brother and I couldn't help but kind of have a little laugh about it. And so the next year when we saw him again, he'd We picked him up from the airport. It was probably LAX. And so my brother and I, as a joke, we took socks and we rolled them up into a ball and we tucked them in between, behind our socks. And so we had these big bulging calf muscles behind our legs. And Dave, first thing we were at baggage claim, and he came out and he looked at us and he looked at our socks and he looked at his calves and he just started laughing. He loved it. Some of his jokes were tremendous, and some of his puns might have been a violation of the Geneva Convention. But it was all the more lovable quirks about that man. So, I lived in Ohio for 6 years, and it was also a very difficult time in my life, and I'm tremendously grateful at that time when he also extended, his care and family to me, and really helped me get through a very difficult time also in my life. I came to visit him last month, and what I loved the most was that he was so positive and so stoic. It was truly inspirational to see how brave he was. It's an absolute tremendous model for all of us. And I've seen that through my own personal experiences with him, and I've seen him interacting with other people. And I know he must have done that with tens of thousands of people, patients, residents, friends, and family. And so I know his positive influence with those thousands of people, and then subsequently their network of people, has undoubtedly impacted positively millions of people. And so I take great joy knowing the immense impact that he's had with his life, and I'll always remember that. Thank you.
Chariots are coming, good news. Chariots are coming, and I don't want to leave me behind. There's a long wide road into heaven, I know. There's a long wide road into heaven, I know. There's a long wide road into heaven, I know. And I don't want to leave me behind. Good news, chariots are coming, good news. Chariots are coming, good news. Chariots are coming, and I don't want to leave me behind. There's a long wide road into heaven, I know. There's a long wide road into heaven, I know. There's a long wide road into heaven, I know. And I don't want to leave me behind. Where's the starry crown? In the heaven I know, and I don't want to leave me behind.
Good afternoon, everyone. The song that you just heard was my grandpa and his group, the Gabriels, from 1967 in Hong Kong, singing Good News, Chariots to Come. And this was the song that would bring him to the United States, the song that gave him a Volkswagen Beetle that he eventually sold for a plane ticket, and he started his life and career out here. But his story goes so much more beyond the coolness of getting that little record deal and getting a Beetle and starting a life. He always pushed himself to be the best version of himself every single day, and always extended his unconditional love and respect to those around him and his family and colleagues that he made along the way. Now sometimes, being his grandson, my mom would sometimes joke and say that he was going easy on me when we were around him, but, a 9-year-old with ice cream, they're not gonna think like, oh, he's stubborn. Who's gonna think that? But certain times, at least, I would beg to differ on that. Of course, there were the times, we'd be getting ice cream or we'd go to Disney and he would just spoil us like any other grandparent. But didn't necessarily mean that he'd go easy on us. He always wanted the best for us in more ways than making sure that we were just happy kids, and he wanted us to live happy and fulfilling lives for years to come. He'd be the one to give us the hard-hitting advice when we needed it most, make sure that we were taking care of ourselves, mentally, physically, in every way, make sure that we were financially stable, that we had a clear idea of where we wanted to go with our life. And he'd be the one to sit us down and have those little 3-hour talks with us and make sure that we had everything planned out the way that we needed it to be. He always stuck it out with me in my toughest moments, knew exactly what to say and when to say it, and he had never wronged us in our lifetime. He unconditionally loved us every single day. In those ways, I believe to me that he was more like a father figure than a grandpa. And I always remember that no matter what kind of day, week, or month that we had, he always made sure to pray with us before going to sleep. He would always tell us that even though we made certain decisions, whatever day that might have been, that he'd love us no matter what, and that he was our grandpa, and he would always, always be there. This is what I loved about him most, his unconditional love and respect for his family, his friends, his colleagues. He remained consistent and unbiased in his judgment. He never led anyone astray, and he always remained true on his word. If there's one thing that I should pass along to everyone here, I hope that everyone here continues to spread his lessons, his morals, and unconditional love to those around you. No matter what kind of day, week, or month you're having, know that you are loved unconditionally. Never stop pushing yourself to be the best Never stop pushing yourself to be the best version of you that you can be, through the good times and the bad, while also taking the time to treat and take care of yourself. If my grandpa taught me anything to carry with me and spread to the world, it'd be these things. So Grandpa, know that you will be missed dearly, but know your love and support will always be cherished by so many. Thank you.
Single breath for granted. God forbid love ever leave you empty-handed. I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. Whenever one door closes, I hope one more opens. Promise me that you'll give faith a fighting chance. When you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I hope you dance. I hope you never feel.
My favorite Bible commentator once wrote, "The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens fall." These characteristics are characteristics found in truly great men. Often, we only read historians' accounts of these men, but it is rare for a person to know one. Well, I stand here to testify to you that I have known a great man. His name was David Francis Lim. Either you knew it before, or you have now heard it from his obituary, but Dave was an immigrant from Hong Kong. This meant he was no stranger to hard work, adaptation, learning, and executing a vision. He combined these with his intellectual talent and achieved much success in life on all fronts. His life was dynamic, filled with love, adventure, and meaning. The incredible stories, the obstacles overcome, the lives touched. There's simply not enough time to recount. But let it be said that you wouldn't have to listen long before you would come to respect him. He was the example of the beneficent physician, the dedicated laborer, the supportive patriarch. Eventually, Dave found his way to Sycamore Primary Care Center, caring for patients and training the next generation of physicians. With the experience of a seasoned clinician and the patience of a father and grandfather, Dr. Lim, as he was called by the residents, was a high-caliber teacher and a wise mentor. He was the sage of the clinic, the doctor's doctor, as the sayings go. The amount of benefit he brought to the medical education program cannot be quantified. Society's gain through the trickling down of high-quality health care from mentor to younger physician and then to the community cannot be estimated. As a resident physician, if you believed your education from Dr. Lim ceased at excellent internal medicine training, you would be making a serious mistake. During their clinical rotation, residents and students alike would become better informed on a variety of topics, such as where are the best eats in Dayton, or internationally for that matter, for he was so well traveled. Politics, tips for journeying to most of the world's popular destinations. But undoubtedly, the most important of these topics was guns. Many of the residents even accompanied him to the shooting range. Thanks to Dr. Lim, by the time a resident is ready to graduate from Kettering Health Internal Medicine residency program, he or she is not only adequately prepared to take boards, but also more than prepared to ace the CCW certification test, as well as being familiar with the operation of most basic firearms. I am thankful to God for all of life's blessings. And speaking of blessings, I am 100% convicted that he strategically placed this great man on my path so that I might be blessed through a relationship with him. This relationship was complex and deep. Mentor, mentee, as I trained under him. Friends, as we confided in one another and shared many values and interests. Colleagues, as for more than 10 years, we cared for patients with and alongside each other. He was dependably supportive, guiding, loving, and self-sacrificing. Through his impact and positive influence, he single-handedly changed my career path. He was arguably the best role model I have personally known. I am certain there's a multitude of people out there, and probably everyone in this sanctuary, that has been more or less blessed in some way from a relationship with Dave as I have. It goes without saying that funerals and memorial services are times of mourning, but it needs to be stated that these unfortunate events are different for the Bible-believing Christian. And why is that? Because, you see, as one, Dave believed with all his heart that the Bible is the Word of God. This means he understood that life on this planet is but the minutest introduction to eternity. That death is simply a transient slumber. That when it's time, his Maker will come again to receive him. This is why, although the Christian mourns, it is not the same, because he has this blessed assurance. What I have described explains why Dave possessed a supernatural peace while approaching the grave. This is the reason many of you heard him say, particularly in the last few months, that he hopes to see all of you in heaven. I stated it in the beginning, and I will now say it again, that I have known a great man. His name was David Francis Lim.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchase of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, perfect delight, visions of rapture now burst on my sight. Angels descending, bring from above echoes of mercy, whispers of love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Praising my Savior all the day long.
My name is Claudia Halstead, and I am a physician assistant that attended Kettering College of Physician Assistant program from 1996 to 1999. PA school is a rapid-fire, abbreviated form of medical school where the volume of information thrown at us constantly felt like we were drinking from a fire hydrant. It was tough to get in, tough to endure, and we understood that we were chosen because of our ability to consume, synthesize, and retain high level of complicated information in a short amount of time. It's all good and fine to know what you're in for a few challenging years, but until you're deeply invested, you can't really appreciate just how hard will be. As first-year students, whenever we bumped shoulders in the hallways with the class ahead of us, they would frequently warn us of what we should expect, some of which we would blow off, understand they were just trying to intimidate us, while others' comments most definitely grabbed our attention. The handouts for General Med 1, get a binder, you're gonna need it. You think Scott Massey's tough and dishes out a lot of information, wait till you get Dr. Lim. First semester isn't that bad. You haven't even started pharmacology yet. Think of the toughest tests you've ever taken so far and times that by 5. That's what you got coming with Dr. Lim. Well, great, just great. Prior to our classes with Dr. Lim, we already had been given several lectures from physicians that had duly impressed me. And so what's Dr. Lim gonna be like? I took comfort in the fact that we wouldn't have to find out until second semester. So for the first 17 weeks, we were spared. Before starting these courses, I had learned a thing or two about Dr. Lim. I knew he had immigrated to the US from Hong Kong, and I knew that, like me, he had an SDA background, which only one other member of the class had. I knew he was a fellow alumni of mine since we both graduated from La Sierra University. And I knew he earned his medical degree at Loma Linda, the same medical school where my father had received his. I certainly knew Loma Linda well, as this is the same town where I was born, raised, and attended all the schooling for my formative years. This is not to say that I thought I had an in with Dr. Lim. This is only to say that I understood the basic values of the man that stood before us. I also knew of his devastating brain aneurysm that he sustained in 1994 that cost him his previous career in emergency as an emergency med physician, and that he had recently gotten divorced for whatever reason. I concluded that on many levels, this man had been through a lot, and now he stood before us willing to teach an RPA program. As a result, Dr. Lim already earned my respect, and I felt that he deserved a gentle place to land. It wasn't long before I appreciated just how very, very lucky we were to have him as a major professor. In the cold of winter, fresh off Christmas break, second semester arrived, and so did Dr. Lim. This time, our classes included General Med 2, medical procedures, EKG interpretation, general surgery, emergency medicine 1, and the dreaded pharmacology 1. This would be our introduction to taking classes from Dr. Lim as well because the latter two were his. Monday morning, 0700, pharmacology class. There we were, gathered in our usual seats, and in walks Dave Lim, 10 minutes late. He was handsome, confident without arrogance, neatly dressed. He had a pleasant smile, soft voice, ready to start his lecture. Seemed benign enough, but we weren't fooled. We could sense what was coming, and I told myself, get ready, embrace the suck. Lim taught with enthusiasm. He gave handouts that mirrored his PowerPoint lectures, but he used them mostly as guidelines rather than information that he just read to us. He quickly started in with how medications were metabolized in the body, the liver's cytochrome P450, the kidneys calculated creatinine clearance, and the role the gut plays. He promptly tore us up with the toxidrome of sympathomimetics and parasympathomimetics. He raced into recalling how renin assists converting the angiotensinogen to the angiotensin 1, which primarily circulates in the pulmonary system, and then cleaves at the C-terminal to the amino acid subsequently created by the peptide of angiotensin 2, and blood pressure then is regulated, and ACE inhibitors, that's where they're going to interrupt. If this dude throws out some kind of medication that works on the Krebs cycle and starts tossing out ATPs in these lectures, throw up a white flag, I'm going down. Then you have the alpha blockers, the ones that relax the smooth muscle. Do you remember his hands? That relax the smooth muscles, not to be confused with beta blockers that are negatively chronotropic, but not selective. Remember that beta blockers should be used cautiously to diabetics. And don't get me started on his lecture involving dobutamine and dopamine. It was like that. Dr. Lim made our heads hurt, and he wasn't even looking at his notes. Each day we had pharmacology. We would start with a 5-point quiz, for which I would literally study late into the evening, get up at 4 a.m. to brush up on the information so I could get ready to be in his class promptly at 7 a.m. to promptly earn myself a big fat 2 out of 5 on his quiz. I found that Dr. Lim's classes were indeed challenging. The topics were complex, the volume of information covered was extensive. He was so enthusiastic with the fine details, but I was missing the structures on which to hang them. Apparently he figured that we should have all figured that out before coming to class. On one particular concept, I was really struggling. I just couldn't grasp it, so I decided to buck up and go to Dr. Lim's office and ask if he'd explain this to me. The answer he gave me shocked me. He said to me, the reason why you don't understand this is because you don't want to understand this. I was crushed. The blow to my chest I can still feel. I didn't even know what to say. I thanked him for his time. I picked up my backpack, fighting back the tears, and I made a beeline for my car where I began to sob. How in the world could this man see that in me? You see, I was by far way too serious in PA school. Seems that all I did was study. I was married at the time, and my poor husband would say that the only view he ever had of me was the back of my shoulders, hunkered over a book, sitting at my desk for hours, just trying to absorb all that was being taught. When I told my husband what Dr. Lim had said to me, it made him so mad that he went to see a good friend of his who also happened to be the academic dean. What was that guy thinking? What's with him? Why would he say such a horrible thing to a student that studies this hard? Wisely, the dean said, calmed down my husband and said, let's just give Dave some time and let's see what happens. That was on a Thursday, and on Monday we had emergency med class, also something that he taught. This one was taught over the amphitheater in the hospital, and for whatever reason, we always sat in our same seats. Mine was in the upper back on the right. Most of us were seated, preparing for class, waiting for Dr. Lim. When he finally comes in, proceeds down the steps, gets up on the platform, and he's beginning to set up his podium. And just before he's about to start, he looks up and he sees me sitting up there. And he sets his books down, gets down. And there I am, sitting seething and injured. And he walks up and he sits down beside me and he says, I'm sorry, I said something terrible to you. Will you forgive me? He put out his hand, I put out mine, he clasped it with his others. I said, of course I'll forgive you. It was at that moment that I knew Dr. Lim was going to become my friend Dave. After graduation, I moved to the beach in Delaware, where I passed my boards and took a job in emergency medicine at a pretty busy level 3 trauma center. Oddly enough, the local community was not familiar with physician assistants. And many of the doctors honestly had no idea about our training or what we were licensed to do. I had to prove myself as worthy and perform at a level that would often surprise them. Our ER didn't have a fast track, so from the very start, I worked shoulder to shoulder with my attendings. They didn't throw me little scraps either. We were busy. I was to go see everything that walked in. And once I went to see the patient, if it was more serious than originally presented, I would grab one of them and tell them, this is what I have, I'm gonna need you to come see him. Initially, I would say, doctor, I'm pretty sure my patient I'm pretty sure he's got a ruptured aorta. He's rupturing his aorta. I'm pretty sure that this guy's got a surgical abdomen. Doctor, I think this guy has ruptured his globe. Doctor, I've never seen it before, but that guy has Fournier's gangrene. I'm quite sure this patient, this is before D-dimers, has a PE. Back then, we were supposed to present these patients to our attendings before we put in these expensive orders. But before long, it got to the point where I would go with my gut, and rather than wait and put the patient off, I'd place my orders and then get things going before I could grab my attending. I knew I had badness just because the patient was taught to me just as Dave had said it would. I once had a middle-aged diabetic patient with a history of hyperemesis. This happened to her frequently, and she came in vomiting, and she was tachycardic. Something about her didn't look right. I placed her on a monitor where the rhythm on the monitor looked suspicious. Sure enough, I ordered a stat EKG, and sure enough, when I took a look, she was having an active heart attack. When I took the EKG to my attending and he asked me, why in the world would you get an EKG on somebody that's vomiting? And I said, because Dr. Lim said that diabetics are neurotypical, and she had tachycardia, and she didn't look right. On the perforated colon that came in, how did you know to get an upright film instead of just getting a CT? Because Dr. Lim said, what made you think AAA instead of a kidney stone on a guy who's 50 years old? And that kid with the basilar skull fracture? Well, because Dr. Lim By the way, for those of you who are in the know, I did not order abdominal CT on my patient with a black widow spider bite. And I couldn't hide my glee when I put a 16-year-old male patient on a monitor after he decided to nosh on some Jimson Wade and was found chasing butterflies in the field. Through the years, I've worked with many, many very bright, very skilled doctors who have also taught me a lot of information. Maybe some even believed in me the way I knew Dave did. And even though we no longer work together, some of these guys are now people that I consider my brothers for life. But all, and I mean all, in my mind, had to earn my respect, and if they didn't, well, pity the fool. In 2002, my father sustained a devastating stroke. It took about 6 months before he finally passed from complications of the same. This was in Loma Linda, where I was born. There were some sticky medical decisions that needed to be made for whatever reason. I was elected, and for whatever reason, I was elected to make them. You know who walked me through every step of the way over the phone? Dave. I knew that no matter how controversial these decisions were among my family members, ultimately I was doing the right thing because Dave would never steer me wrong. On February 9th, I texted Dave a happy birthday. He responded, we had a brief back and forth on what we were each up to. And on a side note, he mentioned that he caught COVID last fall and still wasn't feeling back to his old self. Not uncommon, I thought. For some, it takes time. Later in the spring, Colleen told me that she was getting worried about Dave, that he just wasn't quite right. He had back pain and dizziness and a few other odd symptoms. I brush it off as being lovingly concerned, but he's very well medically connected. He'll sort it out. In April, I took a dear friend of mine to the ER for an evaluation of a GI bleed. 24 hours later, they wanted to give her heparin to prevent a DVT. She texted me to ask my thoughts, and I said, absolutely not. Then I thought, hang on a minute, maybe I'm not a hospitalist, maybe I'm missing something. So I texted Dave, and I presented the case on my text. He agreed with me, of course, and told me why. Taught me on the phone. Little did I know that he was about to be giving the devastating news of his own diagnosis. In other words, in all that was going on, he still took the time to go over a case with me. Once I did receive of Dave's condition, I texted him with a loving note to tell him how much he meant to me, the difference he had made in my life for having him as a friend and a mentor, and that I would soon fly back to see him. He answered back with the most beautiful note that I will never delete. He told me that I was welcome to come stay with him because I was always welcome in his humble home. And among other precious words, he told me how proud he was and how much he admired me. In June, Colleen graciously advised me that I should come sooner rather than later, so I did. I did not stay with them as it was busy enough there in their home. When the time was right, I went to their home, and there wasn't much time to be shared. But I told them of all the things I wanted him to know. Again, I told him how much I loved him, that he changed my life, that his life mattered, that I would do my best to honor him as so graciously as with the time that he had given me and the knowledge and his love. When it comes to Dave, I know my story isn't necessarily unique. I'm quite sure that many of you can relay similar stories of the difference he made in your life. That forever will be his legacy. I think about that a lot, don't you? What's my legacy going to be? When asked, most people would say that they want their legacy to be more about the amazing experiences that they've had with people, the relationships that we've formed, the way in which our lives have impacted those that matter the most to us because of the imprint we leave on their minds and their lives. Very few think of legacy as something that comes in the form of money or fortune. As Dave was leaving the hospital for the last time, Colleen called me so that we could say goodbye. I was at work, but was grateful to have the opportunity to tell Dave that while this is really hard, we will be strong, we will keep living, and will respect his legacy. Rest well, my friend. We love you.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known, none other has ever known.
Should I jinx it? Maybe. We're here today to honor and celebrate the life of my stepfather. Ten words in. Sorry, David. Couldn't do it. Everybody else was doing excellent, and then I come up here, and here we are. But I digress. We're here to celebrate the life of my stepfather, Dr. David Litton, a man of excellence, integrity, and a generosity of spirit. As you've already heard, Dave came from Hong Kong roughly 55 years ago to start his American dream. And it's safe to say that he set out all that he accomplished in becoming a doctor, a husband, a father, and a friend to so many. Many of you know, and I've already heard several times today, that Dave had a brain aneurysm in 1994 that changed the trajectory of his life forever. When faced with this news of his recent terminal illness, he accepted it with grace, a silent fortitude that was humbling to witness. Before passing, Dave expressed that he felt he was like giving an extra 30 years of his life, where he had the opportunity to marry my mother, Colleen, watch his two amazing daughters, Alicia and Jen, grow into adulthood from young girls, and arguably his greatest joy of all, grandkids. But when asked, he said he was blessed with no regrets. My stepfather pursued a life of excellence and always pushed himself to know as much as possible about every relevant and irrelevant, as Claudia just kind of alluded to, topic. Because half these people in the room probably don't even know what the Krebs cycle is, and thank you. But this also made Dave the most respected doctor we all know, admire, and loved. Regardless of the recognition and praise he received, Dave never let any of that go to his head. You could always count on him to act with integrity and class. Dave would go the extra mile to ensure anyone in his life, his colleagues, his family, patients, and friends, felt loved and well taken care of. His generosity of spirit was felt every time I was in public with him. Some stranger, to me of course, would come up, embrace Dave, and thank him for either saving their life or that of a loved one. For situations like that, and many other, Dave carried the title of mayor around. And most recently, before his passing, he actually got promoted to governor too, so yay. But we couldn't go anywhere, any place, without somebody knowing Dave. For me personally, besides being an earworm and finally encouraging me to get into medical school and start that process, and our late night conversations about medicine, and particularly baseball, as we all have heard earlier, Dave is a big Dodgers fan, and I'm a Guardians fan, or Indians fan, so the picadillos back and forth with that was always pleasant. And again, weapons, because it was Dave's stepsons that brought the weapons into his life. So for all of you who had to deal with those conversations, you're welcome. But outside of all those earworms, late night conversations, baseballs and guns, there's one thing I will always be most thankful for about Dave. It was about 20 years ago when he diagnosed my mother with melanoma. And because of his medical expertise and his unique ability to persuade my mother to listen to him, which God love you, woman, I love you, but that did not happen often. Dave was able to quickly and promptly figure out the melanoma, get it, treat it, and because of that, she's with us today. So because of that, and many other reasons, I'm truly grateful Dave has been in my life. I apologize for the sniffles. I'm trying to step back before I do it, but it gets in the speaker. Sorry. I guess I should probably stop apologizing and keep with the speech, but here we are. So, my stepfather Dave took very seriously what he did professionally as a doctor, but he did have a not so serious, more humorous side, as alluded to earlier. And it's often these little silly, sometimes goofy, and often nonsensical things that makes the person we love and miss that much more special. It's the little things, like Dave's love for ice cream, and sometimes the long, smelly car rides back from Benedict's because of his lactose intolerance. And for those that don't know, Benedict's ice cream is his favorite little ice cream stand up in Medina County, or a little town called Wadsworth, Ohio, a little hole-in-the-wall place my mother introduced him to because that's where we're from. And that's a long 3.5-hour car ride with somebody with lactose intolerance. And then the goofiness side of Dave's, where he tries to impress the grandkids with what he always called his finger magic. So something of this nature where he would bounce, and that's how it's supposed to go. You know, you got the 2 fingers here and you come over here. Grandkids love magic. But Dave, being Dave, he just couldn't quite figure that out right. So it's probably a good thing for most of us with Dave's steady hands that he probably wasn't, a neurosurgeon or something of that nature. Stitches, ER stuff, trust him with my life, no problems. But the finger magic, the kids loved it. Oh, Grandpa, yay. But the whole process. And then the nonsensical stuff, like knowing the family holiday has finally begun because of a multiple-hour adventure at Sam's Club or Costco to determine how much turkey or ham there is. And like Mike Daly alluded to earlier, Dave loved to read the labels of all the vitamins at Sam's Clubs and Costco's and everything else.
Well, in addition to vitamins, he liked to read, for whatever reason, turkey and ham as well. And how many residents are coming? Who's this? Who's that? Who's this? And God bless my mother. Dave would tell her a week before, I'm going to have, 15, 30 people over for a holiday. Sure, Dave. That's what it starts off as. And as the week progresses, Dave doesn't want somebody to spend the holidays alone because he's always, generous and doesn't want somebody to be alone. So that initially 35 or 30 people that started off oftentimes turned into 45 or 50. But either way, with those adventures at Sam's Club, there was always plenty of protein to feed an army regardless. When I last spoke with Dave, he wanted us to celebrate his life by taking care of each other and enjoying the time we have together. I hope you will reflect upon that. I hope you all will reflect upon the people that mean the most in your life and honor them by truly being present. We never know how much time we have left. So with that, I ask you all to join me in standing up this afternoon and looking to your left, to your right, front or behind you, and tell that person that they are loved. I thank you all for participating in that little experiment endeavor, because we all know that this man here, that's what he would have wanted. So thank you for being here today to honor my stepfather and to support our family. Thank you.
Sei lontana, sogno all'orizzonte e manca le parole. E io sì lo so che sei con me, tu mia luna, tu sei qui con me. Mio sole, tu sei qui con me, con me, con me, con me. Time to say
If I didn't know any better, I think I'm having an aneurysm. Those are not the words that an 11-year-old girl wants to hear when they're sitting on a chairlift with her father out in the middle of Colorado with skis dangling from their feet. My dad and I would go on an annual ski trip with the Kettering College of Medical Arts. It was just one of our things, and this was one of their trips. And I looked at him concerned, and he elaborated. He said, well, if a patient was coming into the emergency room with these types of symptoms, with this type of headache, I would think that they're having an aneurysm. So we went back to skiing, and I kept my eye on him. And the rest of the day, he was just acting a little bit off. To the point where when we went back to the hotel, he decided to do something a little unusual to me, which was to do laundry at the hotel. Oh, well, this was only like the second day of our trip, and we never did that. So I followed him, and I decided I was going to go get help. And so I went to go get somebody that was with us from Kettering on that trip and brought him down to check on my dad. And my dad, who was stubborn, I don't know if any of you knew that, but he was a little stubborn, like chewed him off and said, I'm okay, just go away. And so, I kept watching him, and by the time we made it back to the hotel room, he was worse. And so I decided, all right, well, I'm gonna go get a nurse from Kettering, who's a couple doors down. And I went and got her, and she came, and then she matched his stubbornness, and made him go to the hospital. When they determined the severity of the aneurysm, it was his colleagues here that pulled together to find the treatment that would fix my dad. They took me into his hospital room, and they told me to say goodbye, and I love you, and they told me that I might not see him again. And then they put me on a plane to go meet him in Arizona as they care flighted him to the Barrow Institute, where there was one surgeon who had developed the one type of surgery that could fix this type of aneurysm. He was only number 6, as you guys have heard, to survive from that type of aneurysm. I am so glad that that wasn't my final I love you and goodbye. And this wasn't just any minor setback. My dad had to relearn how to walk, to talk, to eat, to drive. His mind was still sharp, but he couldn't go back and do what he loved doing, and that was to be an emergency room physician. But this didn't get him down. I watched as he, with sheer determination, built his life back up step by step. And he got back to doing what he loved doing, and that was to be a physician and a teacher. And watching him on such a personal journey, as his daughter, taught me how to live. My dad truly taught me how to live, how to look at the world and adversity. He taught me how to problem solve, how to fight for what I want and for what is right, and to never give up. My father was meant to be a teacher, and he believed that everything that happened in his life brought him to where he was supposed to be. And in addition to watching him and how he lived his life, he would share little nuggets of wisdom with us as his children as we went on. My father always said, you have to do what you love in life. Find that thing, do it, and then use it to help others. And I did that. I followed his advice. I'd always wanted to go to law school, and my dad was proud of that. I became a public defender, which is, I don't think what my dad had in mind when I went to law school. But he was still really proud. In fact, he would sit and he would talk with me about cases, especially when there was a medical issue involved. He would pore over documents, and he would talk with me about how to approach a case, how to approach a particular cross-examination. And he was really integral in like a lot of my cases. And we would spend our weekends doing this, and I will always cherish the things that he taught me and those memories. And my dad always said, too, that the young people have it right. It's not about collecting things in this life. It's about the memories. And he said after he was gone that we need to go on and we need to create more memories. My dad taught me how to care for others. I never once heard him talk bad about a patient. He never complained about them not listening to him. He never judged them, where they came from. He truly cared about each and every one of them. And I take that with me in my practice as a public defender. that people shouldn't be defined by the worst thing that they've ever done. He'd always talk about the thief on the cross. And that people are more dynamic than that, that humanity is found when you take the time to truly listen and learn about them, to try to understand them, and that is how you can help them. My dad taught me about tolerance and acceptance, and it's no joke that I gave him a run for his money as a daughter. No, seriously, I tested his patience. I made horrible choices when I was younger. And in return, he taught me the meaning of unconditional love and acceptance. He gave me the grace to make mistakes, and he never gave up on me. I'm glad that he got to see me grow from my mistakes, and that we had the time to spend together, and then I got to apologize for all the hurt that I'd ever caused him. And not only did my dad teach me how to live, he taught me how to die. When he found out about his diagnosis, he said he knew that the cancer would most likely kill him. But he wasn't going to let that dictate how he lived the rest of his life. For the first time in a long time, he ate all the things that he wanted to do. He never let that take away from spending time with his friends, and they're going target shooting and out to eat with them. And he was still a doctor to everyone around him. I mean, we would sit there and he would be sitting there like diagnosing us all with things that, he thought we needed to go get checked out. Handing out vitamins from his vitamin cabinet and telling us what we need to take, how we need to take. He's like, I don't need them anymore, but you take these and take them for this thing. I don't know. He made sure all the loose ends were taken care of. For after he was gone, he said, you won't have to be abandoned by me even after I'm gone. He knew his time was coming to a close, and if you talked to him around that time, he would have told you he was at peace, that he had no regrets, that he had done everything that he wanted to do, that he was grateful for the 30 years that he got to spend with his family. And he said, it's up to you now. Well, Dad, you did a great job. You couldn't have done it better. You can rest now.
Think about it. There must be a love down in the heart and in the stars above. Without it, life is wasted time. Look inside your heart, I'll look inside of mine. Things look so bad everywhere in this whole world. What's fair? We walk blind and we try to see, falling behind in what could be. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. I could rise above for this higher love.
For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Text from John 3:16 is one of the two texts that David chose to have read at this service. The first, Psalm 23, helps us know that he found a relationship with God that gave him restoration and healing. This text in John's Gospel helps us to understand David's palpable sense of personal mission and life purpose, to provide healing and restoration to everyone around him, to offer this wonderfully gracious message of God's love through his ministry of healing. David knew three truths about this passage. He knew that it's easy to love the world, but not so easy to love the individuals in it. He knew that people, individuals like you and me, are messy. And he knew that everyone around him had value and that he could help them live up to their potential. God does not ask us to love the world. That's too easy. It's a nice philosophy if one wishes to avoid fully giving oneself to the practice of the kind of medicine that requires enormous amounts of time and effort. To love each person that David found in his exam room and in his home. So David took time to do that because he lived in a different kind of time zone, EDT, Eastern David Time. He didn't allow time to be his master, but he lavishly and extravagantly spent time loving the people around him, his patients, his colleagues and staff, his friends, and his family. That was David's religion. Whoever said, "I'd rather see a sermon than hear one," was talking about Dr. David Lim. Nothing was more important to him than being a servant of God in the way that Jesus was a servant to those who needed healing and restoration. That's what the word salvation means. This meant that David operated on a different kind of time, one that wasn't measured in seconds or by the insurance reimbursement clock. If a patient grumbled that Dr. Lim was late for his appointment with them, by the time he was done patiently listening, carefully assessing, and finding the source of their illness, and caring about them enough to engage with them as persons, afterwards they understood how valuable they were as a human being to their doctor, to their healer, who loved them like God loved David. David then loved messy people. The reality is that we're all messy. None of us has our act all together. We are all a test of patience for someone else. Each of us is someone else's private tour guide to their personal Garden of Gethsemane. David knew what Dr. Viktor Frankl knew. In his books, Man's Search for Meaning, Dr. Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist, wrote about how he specialized in helping people recover from their harrowing journey through the trials of World War II. Frankl himself overcame a devastating cruelty of life as a Nazi concentration camp prisoner. He wrote that we can find purpose in life by giving meaning to our pain, by holding on to the hope that we can make our dreams a reality. That's how David understood John 3:16. Sorry, Dave. We have expressed our sorrow today through tears for losing you. There are just too few people around like you. But we also thank you, Dr. David Lim, for inviting us to embrace the legacy that you left behind, to live each day with joy, including this moment.
Sweet dream, baby. Sweet dream, baby. Sweet dream, baby.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops, where you cross the chimney top, that's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh why can't I? Someday I'll worship a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me. When troubles melt like lemon drops, where you cross the chimney top, that's where you find me. Somewhere birds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh why can't I? Birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh why can't I? Why can't I? Why can't I? Why can't I?
Before I offer a benediction to close this service, David's family cordially invites you to join them in the fellowship hall across the hall for a time of refreshments and sharing and caring. And don't worry about the time. We're all synced up with Dave now. Stay as long as you want. Let us pray. Finally, brothers and sisters, farewell. Become complete. Be of good comfort. Be of one mind. Live in peace. And the God of love and peace will be with you. Amen. Go in peace.